Hello and welcome to the Civilization Project. My name is Prathamesh and I'm your host for tonight. Uh, I've started this company called the Civilization Project with a very simple understanding that entirety of reality that we experience is nothing but a lifelong game of choices and consequences. And this reality is constructed by the decisions we make on five levels. The level one being the decisions we make for ourselves, our personal decisions. On the second level, we make decisions as teams, where business comes into play, where sports comes into play, where events come into play. On the third level, we make decisions as societies, then as a nation state, and lastly, on the fifth level, we make decisions as a civilization. When it comes to business decisions, when it comes to team based decisions, innovation is one area which fascinates me a lot. And there's a very simple reason to it. I feel that in this age of abundance that India is very soon entering, innovation is going to be our key to success. And to reveal the secrets of innovation, to reveal the secrets of rapid innovation, to be more precise, I have with us a very old friend of mine, Mr. Rohan Turior, who has more than 15 years of experience across intellectual property management, innovation management. He's also a level 3 TRIZ expert, and this TRIZ is a fantastic framework developed by our Russian friends back in the days of Cold War. So आज रोहन के साथ बातें करेंगे and where we'll try and pick Rohan's brain to expose all of his secrets of fast and rapid innovation. Welcome, Rohan, to the Civilization Project. Happy to have you.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks a lot, Pratmesh. Thanks for having me here on the Civilization Project. Look forward to the
Superb,
interaction.
superb. Yes, I am very super excited. बढ़िया बढ़िया अच्छा Bron, before we go into the depths of innovation and the rapid innovation part of it, I would love for you to introduce yourself so that it sets the context for the rest of the conversation.
Sure. Hi guys. My name is Rohan Turior. I am the partner for the firm called IPS. We are based out of Pune, and we have offices in multiple locations here in India, with presence in US. We have an office in San Francisco. So, what do I do? What have I done? I have been in the innovation and intellectual property domain for quite some time now. I have been working on the intellectual property domain for close to about 20 years and on the innovation domain close to about 15 years now. Uh, that's what I pretty much do. I work on the complete life cycle of innovation, right from the stage where we work on specific problems, generating solutions related to problems, working on protecting the solutions, then working on kind of commercializing the solutions that have been developed by solving the problems that we initially solved, and by way of filing of patents and trademarks and designs, we work towards protecting the innovation as well and enforcing them. So that's what I pretty much do.
Beautiful, beautiful. और यार एक सवाल, how did you enter this entire field? How did you get into intellectual property management? How did you get into innovation? What's the story
Uh,
behind it?
so IP basically happened to me by I would not really say an accident, but then it was a by chance entry for me. I used to be a software guy. I used to work for Wipro back in the day. And
Okay.
there used to be a body in Pune called as Pune Innovation Network. So I used to be a regular to that place. Being an electrical engineer, I sometimes felt that I was out of place in the software industry back in the day. So I used to visit Pune Innovation Network quite often, and there I happened to meet a very interesting person called as Lieutenant Colonel Gyan Daltani. So he was the
Okay.
one who introduced code division multiple access (CDMA) to India, a
Okay.
communication technique. Okay. And he told me that, since you're from the domain and you like working on new age technologies, there's a project that I'm starting. Why don't you be a part of it? So the only question that I had for him at that point of time was, what is it that I'll get? Forget about money. What is it that I'll get that would excite me? He says that, we are working on IP. And at that point, frankly speaking, I did not have any idea about what a patent is, what IP is. He just told me that you will get to pick the brains of the best innovators in the world. So you would get to understand what these guys are working on, what are the cutting edge technologies, understand it to the core, and verbalize their innovations. So that sounded exciting. That's how I got into IP, and that was the beginning. And today
Interesting.
we are sitting here. I've worked on US patent laws, the US patent laws, the Indian patent laws. So when I began my journey, it was more to do with the US patent laws. and then
Okay.
I went to the European and the Indian standards and the patent laws and stuff like that.
Okay.
So now the next question that would come to your mind is, why are we talking about TRIZ, right? I understand
Yes.
that's possibly the next logical question that you. So see, I had been working in IP for a fairly long time, so there were two routes that I could have taken. Either I could have moved to the route of working on the legal aspect of thing, exploiting the legal aspect of thing, which sounded very logical at that point of time. But then the other route was, since I was somebody who was working on patents, drafting patent applications, talking to inventors day in and day out, what really intrigued me was, how did these guys come to the solutions that they talk about when they try to patent? So that kind of intrigued me, and that's where I thought that I probably need to start working on identifying how do people really innovate.
Yes.
So I started working or learning different innovation methodologies that are out there to learn, and that's how I stumbled upon something and stumbling upon TRIS was also a by chance stuff, where I was attending a CII conference in
Okay.
Mumbai, and I came across a TRIS master who was there for his training. So we were out there in the coffee shop, and I met him, and I mean, I generally, when I come across somebody who's interesting, when I spark a conversation, I try to ask that person that what is it that you really do. So he told me that there is a Russian methodology called as TRIZ. It interested me at that point of time, and then later in the career, when I was in house, I came across a very precarious situation where solving the problem became imperative. Okay, so there was a product where we were um, challenged by some large organizations that the product or the solution that you are showcasing right now is infringing one of our patents,
Okay.
and we had to defend it. We had to find ways of doing it, though we wanted the same product out there, which was heavily patented, really to speak. That's when I went back and I thought that I met this guy who spoke about trees that was in problem solving. I got in touch with him, and that's where the journey started, and it has not stopped ever since.
Got it. Got it. But then I this begs me to ask the question कि ये जो भी है framework, right? TRIZ,
Hmm.
where does it come from? What's the story behind it?
Oh, okay. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of Triz. Triz, the inventor of Triz for that matter, is Genrich Altschuler. He was
Okay.
a Russian uh, patent examiner. Okay.
Okay.
So he was employed by the Russian Navy. This guy had his first invention come up when he was in eighth grade. That was to do with submarines. And he had many other innovations that had come up, which the Russian armed forces found useful. So
Okay.
not only did they take custody of his inventions, they offered him a position with the Russian Navy where he was entrusted with identifying the innovations within the Navy and work on problem
Okay.
solving with the Russian naval engineers.
Okay.
Uh, and as you know, that people who are innovative in nature uh, would have the tendency to question each and everything. So
Yes.
back in the day, Stalin used to be leading Russia, and deeper into Stalin. But then he had some difference of opinions, and he wrote a few letters to Stalin, which was, needless to say, not very well received. And he
Right.
was jailed in the Gulag camp at
Okay.
that. And during his tenure in the Gulag camp, we met a few people, and that's how the story started. He started analyzing scores and scores of patents around. He started reading and learning about that patents, and he found a very interesting link between the inventions that were coming in at that stage. And he said that at the core of every problem or the solution of every problem, there is one standard thing that exists, and that is contradiction. Okay,
Okay.
you want something big, but you want something small. You want something large, but you want something really tiny. You want something round, spherical, but you don't want something that's round or spherical. So every time there is a solution, there is a contradiction at the root of that solution, which has resulted into that solution. So he very intelligently, categorized these things. Further, he worked further on those things and said that, innovation happens in a certain way. So if we look at the evolution of Trez, At the very initial stages, that they said that there are laws of evolution. There are laws
Okay.
that evolution follows. Evolution moves in a certain direction and always in a direction. But then what is very interesting about Triz is it is ready to adapt to the changes when they identified that, it's not always forward moving. Sometimes it can be backward moving also on the trend. At that point of time, they said that it's not laws of evolution, because when you say law, it has to follow it to the core, specific in a direction.
Right.
When you say
Right.
trend, that it can go backwards in the trend as well as forwards in the trend.
Yes.
Okay. So that's when they changed the name of it to trends of evolution.
Okay.
And the next very interesting development that happened in Triz was something that's called as function model. Okay,
Okay.
that's one of my favorite areas in Triz. So Triz has multiple tools,
Okay.
and many innovation methodologies say that problem solving basically starts at identifying the problem and solving the problem. Triz tends to differ to it slightly. It says that it's problem identification, it's problem solving, but then there is something that's called as concept substantiation, which is at the very base of finding a viable solution. So
Okay.
every time you have solved a problem, you have created another problem. Okay.
Yes.
If you want to think of it, every time you solve a problem, you create another problem. And
Yes.
concept substantiation actually deals with this as well. It says that, you don't just have to solve the initial problem. You have to solve the initial problem to come to a solution, and you have to solve the secondary problem to come to a viable solution, a viable marketable solution. So that's the big differentiator, is what I would say on the TRIS
Got it.
standpoint.
Got it. But then how is it different from say design thinking or all these other innovation frameworks? मतलब कभी कभी मेरे को फील आता है कि this design thinking is like standard one level framework to innovate, and then Triz is like engineering level, right? So
I get this question very often. I conduct these workshops, and I get this question very often. So when I conduct my workshop, the way I structure it is, you know, when you talk about innovation, you can broadly categorize it into two categories. One is innovation for the products, and the second is innovation for the processes. So
okay.
innovation for the processes has the whole different set of methodologies. You can say Six Sigma, you can say Kaizen, you can say total quality management. A very important tenet to it from my thought process is theory of constraints. And then when
Okay.
you move to innovation for products, there are two viable methodologies. One is design thinking, the other is TRIZ. How are
Hmm.
they different? If we go to the very root of design thinking talks about designing it for the user. Now,
Hmm.
for every product that you see, there are various users during the life cycle of the product. So it harps a lot on the voice of customer. It says that, and one aspect that design thinking brings to the foray is, user many a times is not the consumer of the product. You have to differentiate between a user and the consumer of the product. The consumer can be anybody, but the users are multiple. Right from the
Right.
time it goes to production, so the design of the product should be such that it's easy to produce. Then the packaging, then the transportation, then the storage, then the display or the marketing, and then it comes to the actual consumer. Okay, so when you're solving a product problem, you have to keep in mind all these users. So that's design thinking's way of doing it, and they harp a lot on the voice of customer. When you come to Tris says that, everything starts with a problem. There is an initial problem that's there in place, and when you do a cause-effect chain analysis or a root cause analysis for the initial problem, you more often than not come to a contradiction. Okay, and Tris says that, there is a contradiction inherently existing in each and every product, and when you
Okay.
solve all the secondary problems, you don't really have to think about who is the user at what stage. So
Interesting.
there in design thinking, you have to think about users. You have to do some sort of a scenario thinking, so to say. You have to do the scenario thinking that how would somebody store it, how would somebody transport it, how would somebody display it. Okay, whereas
Right.
when you're trying to solve a problem using Triz, so with one solution, and when you're solving these contradictions, you're inherently taking care of these things. So you don't have to
Got it.
solve these problems at multiple stages. That's how it's different.
Got it. Got it. So then fundamentally design thinking is user based approach, and then your TRIZ is basically contradiction based approach,
Contradiction based
to put it
approach,
very simply.
or trees also harps a lot on voice of product and voice of technology. So when we
Okay.
say trends of engineering system evolution inherently comes with it, and trends of engineering system evolution is nothing but the voice of product. So,
Okay.
so say there is a very basic thought process that I can bring at this point itself is anything that's rigid
Hmm.
at some point of time becomes broken into multiple pieces with hinges. Then the hinges would become flexible, and then the whole product itself becomes flexible. And
Okay.
next stage of evolution is, change of state. Anything that was solid would become amorphous, would become liquid,
Hmm.
become gaseous, and then go to the field.
Got it.
That stage of evolution. And the other aspect is where we say ideality. So when we talk about trees, we say for example, this is one of my favorite examples. What is the function of these specs? And whenever I go to the workshops, I get a generic answer that the function of these specs is improving the vision.
Hmm.
Whereas that actually is not the function of the specs.
Okay.
The thought process behind it is unless there is a physical contact, there is no function that's happening. And if you look at the specs, there is no physical contact between the only component that actually functions, which is the lens in the
Right.
specs. It has no physical contact with the human body, right? The lens do
Right.
not physically contact the human body. Whereas the lens is the only component of the specs that you really need for it to perform its function. So the
Right.
function is the lens and the light that contacts the lens. So to say it only bends the light. And Tris says
Hmm.
that you don't need a product. You just need the function delivered. Find a way of delivering the function. We don't need the product. That's the stage of ideality, where you can just deliver the function.
Interesting. Interesting. I want to take you back to that one concept called contradiction, right? So, ये contradiction क्या होता है, and how do you find these contradictions? And are there different types of contradiction, or are there like set types of contradictions?
So there are two types of contradictions. There is something that's called as physical contradiction, and there is something that's called as a technical contradiction. Physical
Okay.
contradiction can be solved in three ways initially, but then the advanced level says that they can be solved in five ways. The three ways is
Okay.
separation in space, separation in time,
Okay.
and separation in condition. So
Okay.
whenever you have a product that has contradicting demands, you need to say where do these demands are contradicting. If I look at a bow and an arrow, we all have seen a bow and an
Hmm.
arrow, right?
Yes.
If we look at the tip of the arrow is pretty sharp. But if we look
Yes.
at the tip of the arrow, right behind the tip, it's broad. It goes from being
Yes.
narrow to now.
Yes.
Why is it broad at the tip? Why is it narrow at the tip? And why is it broad towards its base? Now, for that, we need to go back and understand what is the very basic purpose of a arrow or a bow and arrow. Back in the day, we understand that bow and arrow was one of the weapons that was used for causing harm to
Hunting.
the enemy,
Yes.
right? So, if you want to cause harm to anybody, the tip has to be narrow so that it can penetrate very easily. Okay.
Yes.
But the base has to be broad so that if the arrow is taken out, maximum harm is caused.
Hmm.
Okay. So that is separation in space. Where do you need it broad? Where do you need it narrow?
Right.
Similarly, there are various examples of separation in time, separation in condition. So whenever there is a contradiction on the physical scale, if we are trying to solve, we say that what property of the product I need, what are the two separate properties that I need in a product? Then we say that do we need those separate product properties at the same time frame? If yes, then we say that do we need it in the same space? If that is also yes, then we say that do we need it in the same condition? Okay. Now take the example of the nail that we drill in the wall, the nails that have flanges that flare out once that they are drilled in the wall.
Yes.
Now, what's the separation there? The separation is in condition. When you're drilling it, you want it to be narrow so that it can easily get into the wall. But once it has been drilled in the wall, you want it to flare up so that it cannot easily come out. Okay.
Hmm.
But then you could not have used an arrow here, because if the arrow was used, the base was already broad, it would not have gotten inside completely. Right now, I want it to flare after it has gotten inside completely. So that's separation in condition.
Got it. Got it. Got it. But then again, ये जो physical contradiction है, how do you recognize this physical contradiction?
It's pretty simple, when you're looking at a product and you say that, this is how it is looking right now, but probably there is a different demand to the system. You know, you try and identify different demands. And the other way of looking at it, okay, so I told you about physical contradictions. It's like, look at this bottle, for example. You know, this is a
Yes.
bottle, this is a very narrow tip, but a broad base. Okay,
Yes.
why do we need broad base to it? Because we
It
want to
has to
store
stay stable.
maximum fluid in
Fair.
this,
Yes.
right? But why do we need a narrow tip?
Because निकालते time you need a.
It's easy to consume, so that it's easy to
Hmm.
consume. All of the water will not fall out. So that's separation in space or separation in time also. How would it be separation in time? You've seen those bottles where the tip is also broad, the base is also broad, but there is an attachment on the top that has a small opening. So that when
Right.
you're drinking it, you just open the sipper. Sipper is an example of
Yes.
it. That's separation in
Yes.
time. Okay, so whenever you're making something, then you realize why do we need it broad? Because we needed to store more water. Now, when we spoke about the second example where the top was also broad, the bottom was also broad, we were storing more water, but we want to pour water faster. In
Hmm.
this bottle, it would not be easier to pour water faster. So when do you want the top part also to be broad? When you want to pour water. But when do you want the top part to be narrow? When you're consuming the water,
Right.
right? So you kept the top broad so that it is broad at the time of filling it up, but there is an attachment on the top that has a narrow zipper so that it does not fall on you.
Right. But then again, this kind of resembles some kind of design thinking also, right? So based on what is the user requirement, you are changing the width of the or the
Right.
diameter of
But
the top.
yeah, so but then for design thinking, in order for design thinking to come up with all these solutions, you'll have to go through who are the different consumers, right?
Hmm.
In there you say that, if I am talking about somebody who's filling the water from a vending machine and dispensing it to a customer, the customer wants it to be narrow, but the person who's filling it up wants it to be broad, so that his
Right.
cycle time is reduced. Whereas when you talk about it from the tris standpoint, you would have come up with the solution earlier.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Interesting. Also, with the so you mentioned physical contradictions and technical contradictions, right? So what are technical contradictions?
So you arrive at technical contradiction when you start doing the root cause analysis. Say we all know that there is a fan in our homes that we use, right? Now, what do we know about fans? And we are in India, so it's safe to say that during Diwali we clean our homes, right?
Yes,
So, what do we do with our fans?
we clean
We
the
clean.
fans.
What are the various parts of the fan that we clean? We clean the blade of the fan, right?
Mainly,
And
yes.
that, yeah, mainly yes, because that's the part that carries maximum dust. That has
Yes.
the maximum surface area, so of course that will attract most dust. Okay. Now, many a times what happens is when you have cleaned the fan, you would have observed कि भाई अब ये पंखा हवा क्यों नहीं दे रहा
Hmm.
है, right? Everyone has come up with this problem कि यार ये
Yes.
पंखा जो है ना मेरा, it has stopped delivering the amount of air that it used to deliver. Now, if you try to do a root cause analysis of the fan is delivering less air.
Hmm.
Now, what are the underlying causes of the fan delivering less air? Let's dissect it. Why does a fan deliver less air? The first is maybe the capacitor has gone faulty. The
Yes.
second, maybe the motor has gone faulty. Now we need to break it and see, was it delivering less air always, or has it started delivering less air after a certain point in time? If we do
Hmm.
that, we say that the fan was delivering perfect air until it was cleaned. When we cleaned it, we cleaned the air from the fan as well. Okay.
Hmm.
So then we say, what is it that we did while cleaning that the fan has stopped delivering air? So the fan inherently, or the blade of the fan, has a leading edge and a trailing edge. it
Yes.
hovers around this like this, and it cuts the air so that the air is
Yes.
circulated in these patterns. Okay.
Yes.
Now, if the angle of the leading edge and the trailing edge is changed, it cuts less amount of air, and therefore this circle that is made, that is reduced. Therefore,
Right.
it's cutting air, but it's probably not coming to the base. It's
Right.
cutting the air over here only. It's not coming down. Okay. Now, if you start doing a root cause analysis and say that fan is delivering less air after I cleaned the fan, what is it that I may have done? So the blades are bent. Okay. Why did the blades bend? Because the blades were thin and fragile. If the blades were not thin and fragile, no matter how much force you apply to it, it would not bend. Now,
Hmm.
being thin and fragile looks like a negative effect, but it has a positive connotation to it. Why has it been kept thin and fragile? So that
So
it
that
should
it can
consume.
cut air easily.
No, that's one part. That's absolutely one part. So, thin air so that it can cut air easily. Secondly, it should be lightweight. Okay.
Yes.
It's lightweight, it will consume less electricity, and
Yes.
therefore it will not cost a lot of money to you. Okay.
Yes.
Now, this blade needs to be thin, but it needs to be thick. Okay. Now, that's a physical contradiction. So, we word physical contradiction in a statement form where we say if, then, and but is the format in which we write it. Okay. So, if, and then we say what is the current state, and after the word then, we write what is the good aspect, and after the word but, we write what is the negative connotation to it or the negative
Okay.
side. So, if the fan blade is thin, it consumes less electricity, but it bends easily.
Hmm.
And after we have constructed this contradiction, there are two very essential tools to this that we need to use. The first is after you've worded the contradiction, you need to go back to 39 parameters. So Tris says that there
39
are 30,
parameters.
yes, Tris says that there are 39 parameters in which all these things are categorized. So it's
Okay.
length of moving object, weight of moving object, weight of stationary object, length of stationary object, stability of an object, reliability. So on and so forth. There are 39 parameters, and there is and once you have identified what is the improving parameter. So in here, if I say if the fan blade is thin, then the weight is less. So the improving parameter is weight of a moving object, because if the
Hmm.
fan is stationary, whether it is heavy or light, I don't care. Only when it is moving, I want it to be light. So that's weight
Yes.
of a moving object. If the fan blade is thin, then the weight is less, but it bends easily. The moment I say it bends easily, what is the deteriorating parameter? The
Probably
deteriorating parameter,
stability.
stability, reliability. These are the
Yes.
two things that are deteriorating. And then there is a contradiction matrix on which these parameters are listed. Okay,
Okay.
in the form of a grid. So you have deteriorating parameter and you have improving parameter here. When you match the deteriorating parameter with an improving parameter, it will inherently take you to specific cell. Now, in that specific cell, you will see numbers. Now, what are those numbers? Now, Tris says that there are only 40 ways in which any and every problem can be solved in the world.
Okay.
Only
That's
40.
interesting.
Okay. So, any innovation methodology for that matter, I'll take a step back, does not give you a solution. Okay. People say that innovation methodologies give a solution, but they never give a solution. They'll only give a direction of the solution. Okay.
Right.
So these 40 principles are the 40 ways or the 40 direction of solutions. And Chris says that once you have mapped the contradiction on the contradiction matrix, you don't even need to use all these 40. You'll have to probably
Okay.
need to use only these three or so when we look at those 40 parameters, there are parameters like asymmetry, there are parameters like spheroidality, there are parameters like composite use of composite material. So there are various parameters there that are there. So for this specific contradiction, you will come across a specific inventive principle that's called as composite material. So that
Hmm.
points you in the direction of usage of composite materials for making fan blades. Okay.
Right.
And then there was a fan blade that was developed that is sold out there in the market. But
Okay.
it was sold back in time it was sold in the name of Seagull. Okay,
Okay.
Seagull fan that was made by Crompton, and Seagull had a fan blade made of composite material. It was pretty thick, so that it would not bend easily. It was adapted from the wings of a seagull so that it would produce minimal sound, almost 60 to 70% less sound than a conventional fan. And since the sound is less, that essentially means that the air cutting is smoother. If the air
Yes.
cutting is smoother, then the electricity consumption is less. So this was a fan blade that was developed that did not bend, consumes less electricity, and is lightweight as well. So you see, through the technical contradiction route, you do a cause effect chain analysis. You identify those specific technical. So when you do a cause effect chain or an RCA, when should you really stop? Because this is going to be unending, right? आप
Yes.
मॉलिक्यूल और एटम के लेवल तक जा सकते हो, तो जाने की जरूरत है क्या वहां तक? Essentially, you don't need to go until there. You stop making an RCA or a cause effect chain when you have either identified a contradiction, like in the fan blade, we said that fan blade needs to be thin. Is there a good part to it? Yes, there was a good part. Is there a bad negative connotation to it? Yes. So the moment you come across a node that has a negative or and a positive connotation both, that's where you have arrived at a contradiction. So you stop when you arrive at a contradiction. You stop when you arrive at a legislative limit. Say for example, government says that भाई मेरे को fan blade इससे thick चाहिए ही नहीं. So
Hmm.
that becomes a legislative limit. Or you arrive at a scenario where there is a scientific limit. Fan blades cannot be made thick because of scientific limitations.
Okay.
Okay. So you stop making nodes to the RCA, which is ever expanding in those specific scenarios. Okay. So that's about technical contradiction.
Interesting. यहाँ पे एक question, because again zooming out, we are having this entire discussion of Triz in the context of rapid innovation, right? So this entire process of doing RCA, finding that contradiction, finding what are the improving parameters and deteriorating parameters, finding out what is the inventive principle which you need to apply, and then actually applying it to coming up with solution. Generally, what is the time frame which goes in this entire process?
It totally depends on how conversant you are with the methodology. In the initial stages, it will take some time. But then for me, I would say it does not take a lot of time because for me, Triz has become a way of life. The moment I see something, I kind of identify the contradiction. So it's all about practice, Pratnesh. If you're doing it for a fairly long time, it'll be instant. But even if you're not doing it for a fairly long time, with uh, guided sessions, you can solve multiple problems in a 3 day, 5 day scenario. So when I conduct these workshops where we work on idea generation of the next generation of products, we generate somewhere around 10 to 15 ideas each day for each product that we dissect.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that these 10 to 15 ideas are also like really good quality ideas. So like ऐसे
Yes, yes.
random कुछ भी नहीं है.
नहीं random ideas नहीं है. See, and this is one of the methodologies of identifying problems. TRIZ has various problem identification methods. When we spoke
Okay.
about contradiction, one of the methodologies of problem identification. Function modeling is another methodology of problem identification. Trimming is yet another way of problem identification.
What is streaming?
Trimming is very useful because trimming helps you bring down the weight as well as the cost of the product.
Okay.
Okay, so to say, people used to do a lot of value engineering at one point of time, right? They would say कि यार इसका
Yes.
thickness घटा दो, इसका width घटा दो, इसका length घटा दो, change the material, make the material porous. But then what we really need to do is, even if we look at this chashma, what we'll do is we'll identify the various components of the chashma. We'll
Yes.
map the interaction of those various components with the other components in the system. Now, the moment you start mapping the various components with the other components, you will essentially identify components that are redundant in the system.
Okay.
And when you identify the redundant, you know what to do. Cut those components.
Right. Was this how there was this trend ना बीच में frameless चश्मा वाला, where you don't have the
Yes,
frame, you just have the two lens and then the, so was
yes,
it?
yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
And when you start looking at the trend for that matter, now I said that anything that's solid becomes flexible and then becomes liquid at one point of time. if you start looking at it from that functionality standpoint, now what does the chashma really do? It bends the light. Okay.
Yes.
Now we just need the lens. We don't need the chashma as such. Then we have the contact lenses, right? Now,
Hmm.
what does the contact lens really do? What does the human body have? Human bodies also have, our eyes have lens. This cornea,
Yes.
retina lens. Okay. Now the focal length of the lens is not correct. We are
Yes.
making that correction by using an external source. Can
Yes.
that be corrected? Okay, that's where the LASIK laser surgeries got introduced, where the focal length correction of the human eye lenses were done. Now, anything that's invasive at one point of time becomes non-invasive. So, the
Right.
next evolution in that direction is you won't even need a surgery. You would probably need some drops that inherently go in your eyes every night or periodically, and that would alter the lens over a period of time. So, metered dosages that can interact with the eyes, inside of the eyes, change the lenses, and bring you up to speed. That is the next logical evolution in this direction. And I bet you somebody would be working on this right now.
For sure. For sure. Interesting. Interesting. Thoda sa, but again, zooming out, are there any specific examples जहाँ पे Triz is actually being used? Any products that we are using right now जहाँ पे Triz
Health
was
band,
used?
your health band, your smart watches that you use. Health band actually
Okay.
was introduced by Triz when the
Okay.
need arose for monitoring human parameters continuously. And this was initially used by athletes, players. They wanted to monitor their parameters. So it used to be like a faceless device, okay,
Okay.
that would not display things. That's also in a trend of evolution. That something that does not have a display gets a display after a certain period of time. Okay,
Right.
so it used to be a faceless device that would be connected to a system at the end of the day, providing with all the parameters through the day. It used to be either tied on your wrist or tied to the ankle. Then the next trend of evolution is transition to super system. So what is the
Okay.
super system that we tie around our wrists? That's a wristwatch. So the
Right.
functionality of a wristwatch went to your health band and the smartwatches came into play. That display
Hmm.
time as well as continuously show your health parameters. That was a Triz innovation. The other interesting Triz innovation is your foldable phone. So
Okay.
there are large organizations that say that they are using Triz. Now they at least now they have started saying Samsung is one of them.
Okay.
G is one
Okay.
of them. So Samsung openly says that whatever innovation comes from the house of Samsung is because of Triz. And foldable
Interesting.
smartphone was one of the biggest, I would say, innovation of the recent times. So anything that's solid becomes has breaks into parts and is foldable, right? That's what we spoke
Hmm.
about right at the very beginning. From the trend
Yes.
standpoint, anything that's solid breaks into parts. So that's what a smartphone is that can fold.
Interesting. Interesting. But then again, taking the same cue, right? So, what do you think is the next logical evolution of smartphones? Because if you see in the market, apart from foldable phones, the innovation curve has essentially plateaued, right? It's just normal incremental innovation. There's no breakthrough which is happening. So, where do you think the next breakthrough in smartphones is coming to?
So, if we look at it from the trend standpoint, we say that anything that's solid becomes liquid, becomes field. Can a smartphone become liquid? Uh, Come to think of it, it would not really be a user-friendly stuff even it becomes, but it goes to a field. It goes to a field. You've seen those keyboards, that you focus a light on the desk, and
Right, the
you
virtual
just
keywords.
so it has gone to the field. Smartphone also has that direction. You have your smartwatches. They have all the capabilities of your phone. Now,
Yes.
do you need a phone?
But it's still cumbersome to use, right? So, I cannot use Twitter on my smartwatch, for example.
So it would be cumbersome to use. So there'll be ways and means of using it. Then maybe there'll be a rollable screen kind of stuff that you just carry like a handkerchief in your pocket, and the smartphone. You just focus it using the smartphone on the rollable kerchief and use it as a phone. Carry it anywhere.
Interesting. possible. I think there was a trend which was right. So we had those foldable keyboards. You could actually roll them up, keep them in your bag, and then you
Yes. And have you heard of that? There used to be a Modu phone that used to
Modu
be
phone.
Modu. Micromax came
Okay.
up with Modu. That was in 2011-12. What was Modu? Modu was a very small phone. Even if you Google it, you'll find. Now it had separate attachments. It had a separate
Okay.
attachment for a camera. It had a separate attachment for a projector. So that was a modular phone. You don't need all the
Hmm.
camera in the phone all the time. Back in the day, you didn't need the camera in the phone all the time. It didn't have to be
Right.
integrated. You just needed an attachment that can be used as a camera.
Right.
So
Interesting.
that's
Interesting.
something I personally believe that that innovation at that point of time was a little ahead of its time. We also don't
Okay.
need a camera in our phones all the time. Now. We don't want the phone to be heavy all the time, do we? Imagine I'm going for a corporate meeting. Why would I need a camera there? And sometimes it's even avoidable. If you go to these establishments where confidentiality is a problem, if you have a camera phone, they don't allow it inside.
Yes.
Okay, so you just need it as an attachment to the device. So that can also be one direction. That invention at that point of time, I believe, was ahead of its curve. Now it's something that can
Okay.
be used at this time.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Uh, One last question on the Triz part. Again, if there are some students or aspiring founders, aspiring innovators who are watching this podcast probably, and they want to pick up this skill set of Triz, where do they start learning what Triz is? How do they start practicing it? Any material, any resources that you could point to?
Uh, See, Tris for Engineers used to be a website that provides a lot of reading material. Frankly speaking, I would say, if you're looking at Tris or trying to learn Tris, I would really suggest getting a coach at least for the initial few sessions because, you know, it can backfire. It can
Hmm.
backfire if you learn the wrong thing first and try implementing it. Like we said, technical contradiction, there is a certain way of arriving at the technical contradiction. If you don't arrive at it in that way, you will not find the right contradiction. So you need to do it in a guided manner for the first few times until you can say that I can do it on my own. There are books on trends of evolution that you can definitely read, ideate around the trends of evolution. So those are things that are available. In your podcast, I'll share the link of the books that are there. You can share
Done.
it with your viewers.
Done. We'll add the links in the description once the
Absolutely,
podcast
absolutely,
is done.
absolutely.
Done. Done. Cool. Uh, One more. So again, this is a interesting segue. अभी innovation तो कर लिया उसके बाद फिर IP वाला part comes into play, right? And now
Right.
we have had this conversation multiple times, and I wanted to bring it here. uh, IPS 1 week. There's this understanding that IP comes in as a protective mechanism, right? So you've come up with something innovative, and you protect your innovation basis your IP, right? You file a patent, you file your copyrights, you file your trademarks, so on and so forth. But there's
Right.
also the use of IP for innovation, right?
Absolutely.
So can you throw some light on that aspect of IP?
So, patent circumvention for the largest amount of time used to be one of my strengths. It still is, and that's something that I've done a lot. So, you remember the example where I gave that we were pointed out that the product that you're displaying is infringing our patents.
Yes.
So, my initial problem was this solution is there in the patent, and I want to use the same solution. How can you use
Okay.
the same solution without infringing the patent? So, patent circumvention is one methodology that you can employ where you mine patents that have solutions to the problem that you're trying to solve. And
Okay.
then, claim of the patent is the life of the patent. You construct a function model of the claim of the patent, and thereafter, you either trim or you find an alternate object that was there in the claim itself that can do the function without infringing the claim of the patent. So that's one way. That's one. I would say that's one shortcut to innovating. There are people out there already who have solved the problem that you're trying to solve. You just need to identify the people who have solved the problem and identify the patents that are filed on the solutions and circumvent the patent. Thereby, you will
Okay.
get a patent to your name. You would have solved the problem, and you would have solved it much easier. So, as way of patent circumvention itself, I have about 8 to 10 patents to my name just by doing this patent
Wow.
circumvention. Some of them are licensed as well. By the
Wow. Interesting. Interesting. But then again, this begs me to ask you a question: how do you find these patents? How do you mine these patents?
way. So there are various ways of searching patents, and when you search patents, there are specific fields in the patent that you need to search. If you search in the field of the claims of the patents, you will more often than not, if you are searching for a specific problem, you would have some solutions that you think are there, out there. You would search using those keywords in the claims of the patent. You would come across those patents. They would be the first ones to come, by the way. And the other
Okay.
way is looking at the backgrounds of the patent. So in the background of the patent, what do we write? We write the problem that we are trying to solve. So when you're reading the patent, now instead of reading the claims, read the background of the patent. The moment you
Okay.
read the background of the patent, if they are solving the same problem, then they have probably identified another way of solving the same problem. Okay?
Right.
And
Right.
pick up those patents and circumvent those patents.
Got it. But then again, chalo, I know the problem that I want to solve, and I found a couple of patents which are there right now, which are the solutions which I also had in mind. But then again, there are these embodiments as well, right? So where you have multiple solutions which are covered in one single patent, right? But then how
Right.
do you actually circumvent it?
See, patent circumvention has multiple tools. Okay. Function modeling is one of it. Then there is a prosecution history that every patent has. So you have to go back
Okay.
to the prosecution history and identify what were the embodiments that were rejected at some point of time. So there are specific limitations that are imposed on a patent. You'll not get a blanket patent. So the job of the patent officer or the patent office is to limit the inventions. So you
Yes.
cannot have. So I invariably say that there are only 7 fields that exist in the world from the TRIZ
Okay.
standpoint. We call it as
Okay.
MAT, Chem, IB. Okay,
Okay.
where M stands for mechanical, A stands for acoustic. So it's so on and so forth: mechanical, acoustic, thermal, chemical, electrical, magnetic, information, and biological. So anybody who
Okay.
would have filed a patent, he would have covered only one of these fields. He cannot cover all these fields in a single patent.
That's
So
very
there are
interesting.
6 ways of solving the same problem.
Can you give an example of this? Any example?
Matchkin IB, there are several examples. Now, see, the car key that we have right now, it used to be a mechanical device, right?
Yes.
Now, the button that you see over here, now this is not an electric mechanical device anymore. Okay,
Yes.
then you have buttons on the car, they are not a mechanical device anymore. Okay,
Right.
the mechanical has gone to electronic. There can be
Right.
acoustic way, it can work on voice command.
Yes.
There can be a thermal way. Everybody has a different thermal imaging. Okay, I go
Right.
near it, it opens on its own.
Interesting. Interesting. So basically, then what you're saying is, even if you just pick up a problem and then just apply these lenses, you can still come up with a lot of different solutions.
Yes, so that's what I said. Triz has several nuggets that can be used at different points of time, depending on the availability of time or the nature of problem that you're trying to solve.
Right. Right. Got it. Got it. But then again, there's this one question which I've personally also struggled with, and there are a lot of people who have asked me this question also. Especially if you, so again, just for context, this question is coming from people who know basics of pattern searching. Okay.
Okay.
So what happens is they have a problem in mind which they want to solve. They go to some IP database and they
Uh-huh.
start searching around for patterns which exist around the same problem. Okay. And what they see is there are n number of patterns which are there, like 100 patterns, 500 patterns,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And that essentially becomes a demotivator for them कि यार इसमें already 100 patterns है 500 patterns है तो मैं इसमें क्या करूँगा. How do you address this kind of a situation?
Pradi, what is to think here is 500 patent है तो 501वां patent क्यों नहीं हो सकता है? Okay.
That's fair.
If there are already 500 patents, that means there are 500 different ways of doing it. Why can't a 501st way of doing it exist? Okay, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, what is the field that's available to you in the product where you're trying to solve this problem? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there can be different field availables in different products where you're trying to solve a problem. Okay, and work based on the field that's available to you. Okay, now the same problems has been solved in the aircraft industry, and the same problems are being solved in the auto industry as well. That that's how basically innovation flows. The problems are first spotted in the aircraft industry or the shipbuilding industry. The solutions are identified there, then they are tailored for the auto industry, stuff like that. Okay, problems are first a lot of times solved in the medical devices industry, because that's where the solution to the problem is imperative. It's a matter of life and death, and then
Yes.
similar solutions are replicated elsewhere. Okay, so this has another nugget that says alternate system design. Okay, where you say that the problem that you're trying to solve has already been solved in some other industry.
Mm.
So when you look at these 500 patents, they would all be catering to different industries. Okay, and invariably you will not have 500 patents on the specific problem that you're trying to solve for the specific industry. Okay, so you need to look at the technology that each of these patents are pointing towards. Identify the technology that you want to work with, find out the patent that points in the same direction of technology that you're working in, find that patent and circumvent that specific patent.
Okay. Can you share any example of this particular thing?
Uh, yeah, I can share an example. So it will be a little technical, so I'll try to make it as simple as possible.
Sure.
So in the auto industry, there's something that's called as an air filter. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what's the job of an air filter? We all know, if we have studied basic mechanical engineering, we would know that the engine burns a mixture of fuel and air. Now, there
Yes.
is a ratio that's called as the stoichiometric ratio. Stoichiometric ratio is nothing but the right recipe that if it goes to the engine after the compression and combustion and exhaust cycle, it leaves minimal exhaust and is most efficient. So, stoichiometric ratio needs to be imperatively maintained. Okay. Now, imagine a device that is running at 1,500 RPM, and you have to provide that measured amount of fuel and the measured amount of air. Now, fuel being liquid, metering it is relatively easier. Air
Yes.
being a gaseous uh, thing, metering it becomes difficult. So, there is a
Yes.
mass airflow sensor that's placed at the tip of an air filter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the job of the mass airflow sensor is to get the exact mass of air that should exit the air filter and get into the engine. Now, the requirement of this mass airflow sensor is it needs to have a laminar flow. Okay, as in
Right.
streamlined flow. If the flow is turbulent, it will not be able to measure it properly. Now, if it is placed at the tip, the flow so basically an air filter is nothing but like a bottle. Okay, this outer bottle will have an opening here and there is a cartridge inside it. So the air enters from here, whirls around it, and while whirling around it goes in through the cartridge, and this is where it exists. This is the
Okay.
clean air, and imagine there is an opening over here. That's the entry of the natural air, and this is the
Right.
exit clean air. So it whirls around it, cleans and exits the top. At the top, I install a mass airflow sensor because at the exit, I need to have the metering of the air. Now, since it is whirling around, it will not be a laminar flow. I want it to be a laminar flow for it to be measured properly. So, what I do is I install another device on top of it, okay, and a small filter on top of it so that whatever flow is coming outside from here, so it's like a dead volume that's placed right on top of it. The dead
Okay.
volume in the air measures it properly, and then sends it out. Now, this product was patented. Okay. And we wanted to use the same product. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what would we do? What would we do? Now, there's a tendency, and there's one more thing. There's one more thing. So, this air does not only go to the engine, this air goes to the compressor also. Remember,
Right.
we have hydraulic steering wheels and we have hydraulic brakes. So the
Yes.
hydraulics, there also, and we also have the compressors. So the compressor
Yes.
also needs, and there is only one source of air in the engine. So the moment you put in a keyhole over here that directs some amount of air to a different location, you are further adding to the disturbance in there.
Right.
Okay, so what they would do is, यहाँ पे they would take an exit out for the compressor. इसके ऊपर में there is a dead volume, और dead volume के ऊपर यहाँ से जो exit है that would go to the engine. So I need two exits. I don't need one
Yes.
exit. Okay. Now I would still say कि यहाँ तक आते आते the air becomes laminar, but then the moment I take this exit ना, it becomes turbulent again.
Yes.
But if the turbulent, if this opening is taken deep down inside, it is sucking it from deep inside. Hence, the turbulence would be at the base right here. The turbulence would be
Right.
somewhere at the base. And by the time the air comes to the top, it becomes laminar again. So, in the process of circumventing, what we did is the exit for the compressor, instead of keeping it here, we took the exit for the compressor in here. Okay, we just put a pipe in here from where it would suck and take it to the compressor, and the top was still laminar. We reduced the
Hmm.
need for a dead volume, thereby reducing the weight, the cost of the overall system, and still providing the same efficacy.
Got it. But then again, in the same example, right? So this sounds more like an incremental invention or incremental innovation on the existing innovation, right? Rather
Right?
than circumvention per se.
No, it would not be. See, it was it incremental? Yes, it was incremental because breakthrough was the mass airflow sensor. Okay, breakthrough was the mass airflow sensor, but then
Yes.
the employing the mass airflow sensor in itself was a challenge. So this was an
Right.
increment over the mass airflow sensor. Okay, whether we talk about the dead volume invention which was patented or this invention, both were incremental. They were not breakthrough. Okay, but did we circumvent the patent? Yes, we circumvented the patent because the whoever found out the dead volume, it was breakthrough at that point of time because nobody was able to provide metered flow.
Right.
Believe me, that dead volume product was there in the block for a fairly long time. It was there
Okay.
on the block for a very, very long time. Nobody dared change it. Okay. So now it takes me to the stage where we say that what is breakthrough and what is incremental. Whatever that
Yes.
has been existing for a fairly, fairly long time. No? And no matter how small is the change, say for example, a transformer provides an efficiency of 99.3%. Okay. Now,
Yes.
taking it from 99.3 to 99.5 in itself is a task, though the delta is
Yes.
only 0.2%. Okay.
Yes.
So, though it looks incremental, but it is breakthrough from the standpoint of that particular domain.
Right. So basically, you're saying if a particular technology is a long-standing standard per se for a long period of time, and if you change that standard, if you break that standard, then it's a breakthrough per se.
Pretty much, yes. Pretty
Right.
much, yes.
Right. Got it. Got it. Okay, so basically, we talked about risk, we talked about a bit of patent circumvention. There's one more area where your primary expertise lies, which is theory of constraints. Uh, what is TOC? What is theory of constraints, and how does it work?
Theory of constraint is a very, very simple methodology, you know. There are various tools to this methodology, and it harps on the very single thought process of there is always a constraint in the system. It has
Right.
five tenets to it: identify, subordinate, exploit, subordinate, elevate, and the last step is boogie, process of
Okay.
ongoing improvement. So in any system, there is one bottleneck because of which the output of the system is slow. You need to identify the bottleneck and you need to ensure that the bottleneck is being utilized to the optimum. And then you need to subordinate everybody else to ensure that the bottleneck is working to the optimum before even elevating it. Say, for example, I am in my organization, one of the person who reviews the project, say, for example. There are 15 people who are working on projects. And say, for example, we have to deliver 30 projects a day. But I can only work on 10 reviews at a time.
Hmm.
So if you map me from the standpoint of my organization, I'm the bottleneck, right? But the organization is not even delivering 10. The organization, though I can do 10, the organization is delivering only 6 or 7. Why?
Hmm.
Reason being, I'm not able to dedicate my time to operations. Say, for example, I am mired in finances, I'm mired in marketing, okay, those efforts. So, TOC says that, you identify the bottleneck, you exploit the bottleneck, and in order to exploit the bottleneck, you subordinate. So find all other resources that are there in the system that can help this bottleneck concentrate only on the primary job so that he can optimally be utilized. So remove distractions basically. So for me, remove the distractions of marketing, remove the distraction of finances, remove the distraction of everything so that I can concentrate on reviews, and at least those 10 projects can go out. Once you have
Got it.
achieved optimum with the bottleneck, and the bottleneck is working at the optimum, then you elevate it. You needed 30 projects out every day because the team can deliver 30. Then you elevate it. Bring in two more people who can deliver 10 projects a day after review. That's where you elevate. Now, since we have done this, we have brought in three people who can review 10 projects a day. We are delivering 30. Now, who becomes the bottleneck? Now, who becomes the bottleneck? Answer me.
You will become the bottleneck because you cannot review
Now,
these
the
many
team.
projects.
Once I have
Okay.
elevated myself and three people are reviewing 30 projects every day, now the team becomes the
Ah,
bottleneck
yes.
because they are not able to generate more projects.
Right. Right.
Bottleneck has shifted. That's what POGI is, process of ongoing improvement. So the bottleneck keeps shifting in an organization.
Okay. Okay. But then this is giving me a feeling that this TOC wala framework is primarily focused towards process innovations and not technical or other product innovations, right?
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right.
Got it.
It's
Got it.
very, very effective in optimizing the current system. It has worked wonders for organizations where with the same amount of resources, their profitability has gone manifold. Okay,
Okay.
their
Okay.
profitabilities have grown manifold just by optimizing all the resources. So when you look at an organization, now, there are several resources across the complete value chain. If you
Yes.
optimize each one of these, now the summation of the deltas is a quantum leap. Say it's like
Yes.
you can go from X to 1000x. That's the quantum of leap that's available in any organization at any given point of time.
Okay. And can you share some examples of where how you have implemented TOC or where you have implemented TOC? Any
See,
kind of
there are.
particular
I
problems
can give you very vague ideas because I am constrained by the confidentiality agreement that I've signed with the organization that I've worked
that I
with.
can understand?
You know, like I told you, that people who are doing 100, 200 crores have gone to 1500, 1600 crores just by
Wow,
deploying. Yes,
that's an insane improvement.
that's right. That's right. But then TOC and TRIZ, both, they are not just methodologies, okay? They have to become the way of your life. They have to be integrated, ingrained in your character. That's how they'll get ingrained. They have to become the DNA of your organization. Then only will you achieve the kind of result that I'm talking about.
Right, right. No, I completely understand that, and I think one fundamental lesson that I am deriving out of all of these three methods that we've discussed is something which shines through your personality, right? So you constantly keep on thinking about, ye chal raha, ye chal raha. This is how the system is operating. This is the problem. This can be the potential solution. This is the problem. This can be the potential solution. So this identification of problem, right, in any given particular product or a process, I think that's the key lesson here for me at least. कि आप जब
Very
product
much.
देखना problem देखना शुरू शुरू करोगे, then you can think about use how to use these tools to find solutions,
Right, right.
right? But
And
then
as
the
an agent,
question becomes, huh,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
so I was just saying then the next question that becomes is how does one adopt this approach? How does one build this approach? How does one become a problem solver or a problem identifier at least, if not a solver?
Uh, See, in order to become a problem identifier, all you need to do is, you don't need to look at holistic problems because the problems are never holistic. With the
Okay.
moment you start breaking them down, you will identify that one component because of which the problem is there. You
Right.
should learn the art of breaking things down into pieces first. You know, individual components. हर चीज अलग काम करता है. Together they produce a result. But when you're trying to, so you want them together when you want the result. But you want them separate when you're trying to identify which is the naughty guy there who's not producing the result. So learn to fragment it.
Right.
Divide and
Right.
rule, I would say. Britishers used to say divide and rule, I would say divide and solve.
True that. True that. True that. Got it. Uh, is one second. Yeah. So again, the very purpose of doing this entire podcast with you is very simple. I fundamentally believe that, and this is something again we've shared, and this is something we've tried to work on as well, right? As country, as India, I think the biggest resource for innovation, the biggest research for our R&D is currently landlocked inside our academic institutes, right? Engineering colleges, STEM
Right?
colleges. वहाँ पे there are lakhs of students who are taking admissions every year, right? To learn engineering, to learn product building. Uh, is there any particular advice that you would give to these students or even faculty members in these colleges in terms of how to build this culture of R&D, how to build this culture of innovation, and how to start solving problems which again will have a lot of compounding effect going forward?
See, the way I look at it now, uh, the first step to solving the problem is to learn to imitate perfectly. Okay.
Okay.
Back in my college days, there used to be a professor who used to say कि नकल के लिए भी अकल लगती है, and which is
It is.
very true. Okay,
It is.
so that's the way a lot of economies. I would not name them, but that's the way a lot of economies have learned. Okay, there are few things that you can do. First, you can learn to imitate very well. Once you have learned to imitate very well, you need to imitate it so well that it's better than the existing one. Okay, it's better than the original, and then you start to question the beliefs. So now, as a nation, I believe we have learned to imitate, we have mastered the art of imitating, and now we are moving to the next stage where we are questioning the beliefs. Okay.
Okay.
Every for college students, I would say that if somebody tells you this is how it is, question this belief that why is it the way it is? Can it not be the
Right.
other way around? The first thing is you need to learn to question the beliefs. There is nothing permanent in this world. Okay, everything is bound to change, and that does not mean that you question anything and everything, even without a logic. But then you first need to have a very good scientific base, I would say. The basics need to be really strong. The basics on the science side or even on the psychological side, the mental side need to be very strong. The beliefs have to be good, and then you question the belief कि ऐसा ही क्यों. The moment you start questioning now, and before you start questioning, you think ki what other solutions can be there. You can bounce those things with people around. You will definitely come across a lot of innovation. But the very basic is learn to imitate well, and then learn to question the beliefs.
Right. Right.
I think that's
Got it.
changing in our educational system also these days, pretty much. Back in the day when I was studying, it did not used to be the norm, but now it's pretty different. There are a lot of startups
Yes.
coming up. Startups are nothing, but they are the ones who are solving specific problems that they are focusing on. So yes, this
Yes.
culture is coming pretty much, I would say.
Yes. And I think under NEP, they are also making innovation a priority. They are making entrepreneurship a priority. Just recently, I did a workshop on design thinking for a college, right? So
Mhm.
because it's a part of their curriculum now. Design thinking is a part of their curriculum now, which is fascinating for me already, because that's the signal of change, right? So
Right, right.
किधर तो वो revolution शुरू हो रहा है, किधर तो वो change
कहीं
शुरू
तो
हो रहा
शुरू हो रहा है. कहीं तो शुरू हो रहा है.
है, right? Right. But then again, if these colleges or if these students are to work on particular problems or particular solutions, right? And if they, so we talked about these three very interesting methods of rapid innovation today. And if they
Mhm.
want to apply these methods, right? Where do you think are the biggest opportunities in today's India where they can apply rapid innovation and come up with some really good solutions which are commercially viable as well?
See, there is one industry that you know. I keep saying that there are few industries that would survive forever. Will not stop wearing clothes, will not stop eating, okay, and will not stop. I mean, so these are certain things that are essentials to human. So work on the essentials. Don't work on the luxuries. Okay. Though the luxuries would adopt to something that's classy or interesting first, but if you solve the problem of the essentials, it has the potential to grow, manifold. If there is one problem of essential that you've solved that can change or revolutionize the way people look at a certain product. So identify
Right.
the essentials around you, which you think have been the way they have been forever, and work on those. Say, for example, a soap in our house. It has been the way it has been forever, right?
Right.
There are several products. There are several products that have huge potential of change.
Right.
Okay.
But then everybody is right now distracted with AI karna hai, blockchain karna hai. So how do
Uh,
you kind of compete with that?
AI, blockchain, and everything. Now, Praddy, we've been talking about it for fairly too long to understand. What we call AI these days is not really AI. They have not really gone to the stage where they have created that amount of training data. They have prepared the ontology and the training model and stuff like that. What people call AI these days is not really AI. Most of them, it's more like a system that adjusts to the existing parameters, but only a few parameters. It's not artificial
Yes.
intelligence at the core. Okay, AI is the future. Yes, AI is the future. But AI, I mean, I also keep this question very often. Keep getting this question very often from people around me that if AI comes, we would probably not be required. Okay, but then remember that when computers came into being, this threat was there that the computers have come into being, humans will not be needed. But somebody needs to
Right.
operate the computers. Similarly, if AI is coming, some human is only coming up with such an innovation. So you need to take your level of understanding and technological adaptability a notch above. It's nothing. It's not a threat. It's just a push so that you improve yourself. So that's that area that's going to improve. Yes, that's going to improve. But will AI create all the physical products? No, it will not. The physical products would still be needed by the mankind, and they are there to stay. Now, whether
Right.
you leave AI with the task of innovating these physical products, or you do it yourself, or you train AI in such a manner that it produces the best results, that needs to be done.
Right. Right. Got it. And I think one more big incentive for people being attracted to AI or blockchain kind of technologies is because there's a perception, right? कि यहाँ पे पैसा बहुत है. If you crack something in AI, you'll get a lot of money. If you crack something in blockchain, you'll get a lot of money. And अगर आप physical products side पे जाओगे तो वहाँ पे पैसा ही नहीं है, right?
And
Is that true?
is that true? That's how the projection is. That's what the projection is. But I don't really feel that's totally true. For an economy like India, so we are a very different economy compared to the Western economies. We are a very different economy. Okay, that's true. But what percent of the employable youth here in India is working in the IT sector? What percent of the employable youth in here in India is working with the MSMEs? Okay, and the MSMEs are pretty much here to stay. They contribute almost 30-35% to the GDP of the nation. Can the MSMEs deploy AI? Probably yes, but are they willing to deploy AI right now? Probably no. Is because we are a very cost sensitive economy for that matter. Are these
Yes.
solutions that cost effective? They might become over a period of time, but not today. So you probably would be interested in working in solutions that can help make these things cost effective. So that's
Right.
one area of growth that's available to you as as a qualified person in the domain. But then yes, following that trail does not really help. We both know that there are only three things that drive people: fear, greed, and passion. Right now,
Yes.
greed is all that's driving them, right? But
Yes.
then we should remember that there are the other two factors as well. And people who
Yes.
are driven by passion reach far beyond than the people who are driven by greed or fear, for that matter.
Yes.
So let's decide to be
True.
driven by passion instead of greed.
I am completely endorsing that. 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're driven by passion, you would not feel that the work that you're doing.
Yes,
And as people say that it's not about the destination, it's also about the journey. You should enjoy the
always,
journey.
always, always. Got it, got it. I just wanted to add one last question here, or
Mhm.
rather, a second last question here. In terms of opportunities, again, something which we have discussed a lot of times, but I wanted to make this a part of mainstream conversation as well.
Mhm.
India still imports a lot of technologies from outside, right? So especially
Yes.
when it comes to say medical devices, we are importing more than 80% of the medical devices we consume, and it's flabbergasting for me because these medical devices are literally the difference between our life and death, and we are importing these technologies, right? So is there a case to be made that all our engineering talent which is trying to learn engineering right now can be probably deployed to start substituting these imports to create new innovations, more indigenous innovations, and then work around it?
Medical devices, defense. These two sectors where India needs to be indigenous, absolutely indigenous. And Acha, let me ask you: do you know that how many companies in the world manufacture the vibrator chips that are used in our smartphones?
Probably two or three.
There's only one company. There's only one company in China that manufactures it, exports it to the world.
Only one company.
And if that company stops exporting it, no phone in the world will have a vibrator.
But then what is stopping anyone else to from producing those kind of chips?
Right? That's the question. That's the question that needs to be asked. That's the question. Forget about that. We are talking about medical devices industry. We are talking about defense, where we need indigenization. Now, what is at the heart of these products are the semiconductor chips, the
Hmm.
very heart of these products. Okay. Now, how many semiconductor chips does India manufacture over a period of year? We import most
I
of our
think
semiconductors.
there's yeah,
So
but I think there are some instrument
there has to be a
there are
huge
some
push.
investments happening.
Investments are happening. Investments are happening. And how much time does it take for a semiconductor chip manufacturing plant to be set up? How much time does it take for it to become operational? So those are the opportunities that India has. India has to grab it with both hands. I would not even say opportunity; they are pretty much the necessities today. I would say. Okay, there
Yes.
are bodies, non-government bodies that are liaising with the government, working on these domains. So those are the areas. Semiconductor is one strong area. Biomedical electronics is another area. Defense is another sector. So these areas are there to grow. So don't bother about the AI. The AI would always run on a semiconductor chip. Bother about the semiconductor chip. If there
Right.
is no computer, what would the AI run on? So the
Right.
hardware is always there to stay. The software may evolve. The hardware is also evolving, but the hardware is always there to stay.
Right. Connecting the dots, your TOC wala framework, right? So your biggest bottleneck in the entire industry right now is probably your semiconductor manufacturing.
Pretty much, yes. I would say. I would say.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. Cool. One last question. चलो इनोवेशन करने की मेरे को इच्छा तो है, ठीक है. I mean, imagine I'm a college student. I do want to innovate. I do want to do research. I do want to solve really hard technical problems. But then the question becomes कि इसको पैसा कौन देगा? Who will fund my research? Right? How do we solve that problem? Or are there any funds available? Can we collaborate with industries? How can we solve the money problem?
There are many PPPs out there, public-private partnerships that are out there. There are various incubation centers that are housed within these colleges. So to tell you, I was recently at a college there in Bangalore where I was giving this session on TRES just about a couple of days ago. And there are certain labs in the college that are sponsored by Capgemini. There is a lab that was sponsored by, I think, Mahindra. So there are these grants that are available to the students. There is grant given by the government of India. There is a grant given by BIRAC. So specific problems, there is a grant given by DRDO. There is a grant given by SITAR. So there are several grants that are out there. You just need to know the domain that you are working on, and you need to just do a little bit of Google study or come across, like I'm the Spock for MSME here in the Western region. Come to me, I'll
Okay.
tell you, I'll guide you in those directions. So there are several people out there. There is Atal Innovation Mission that's there, where I'm also one of the mentors of change. You can reach out to the Atal Tinkering Lab or the Atal Innovation Mission. You will invariably come across somebody who will support you with this.
Got it. Got it. Brilliant. Fun conversation. Any parting thoughts?
Only one parting thought, and the parting thought is don't be driven by, greed. Be driven by passion. Passion lasts forever. Greed lasts for a short
Yes.
while. That's what I would say.
Yes. Brilliant. 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 Thank you so much, Rohan Bhai. It was a very,
Rajneesh,
very interesting conversation.
indeed,
And I hope,
indeed.
yeah, I hope people take some inspiration from you and start following trails, start using TOC, start using pattern circumvention, and come up with indigenous innovations. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, if anybody wants to follow your work, how can they follow you? Where can they connect with you?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm not very active on social media, so I would not say Twitter, Facebook. LinkedIn is where I'm a little bit active. You will, and we can provide my email ID and my phone number on the podcast link. They can get in touch with
Sure.
me. And I'm always available. If you have come up with a problem that needs a solution, or if you want to innovate, that's something that I'm always personally invested in all the time. I would always be available.
Brilliant. I'll do that. I will add your contact details in the description. So if anybody
Right,
wants to get in touch with you, they can do it easily.
right.
Brilliant.
Thanks
Brilliant.
for, thanks for having me
Thank you.
here.
थैंक यू सो मच रोहन इट वाज फन कॉन्वर्सेशन जल्दी मिलते हैं जल्दी वापस और कुछ करते हैं एंड इट
Sure.
वाज अ वेरी 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 फन कॉन्वर्सेशन थैंक यू सो मच वंस अगेन
Thanks, Patty. Take care. Bye bye.
ओके बाय बाय
Signing off. Okay.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. This was Rohan, and we talked about these three very interesting tools for rapid innovation. Please try and apply it. We'll try and attach as many learning resources as we can, so that it becomes easier for you to pick up these skills, new skills. And we are very very excited to see that if people, if you really start applying these tools and if you can really come up with innovations, we'll be your biggest cheerleaders. But on that note, thank you so much for watching. My name is Prathamesh, and I'm the founder of the Civilization Project. And thank you for watching this podcast. We'll come back soon with another episode. Thank you. Tata. Bye bye.